It's just an absolute gorgeous day in the woods back here. The land that I'm walking on is my mother's land, and I deer hunt out here, spend many hours traversing these woods out here. So know it well, and I love it. So the reason why I came out here is I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you about this whole idea of getting older. Not too long ago, a couple of years ago almost, I got into my 50s, and also my father passed away, and so many of his friends have passed recently. And when I say recently, I'm talking about the last 5 years. One of my very good friends that I spent a lot of time with in my younger days lifting weights passed away a couple of years ago, actually almost 3 years ago now. And then today, my daughter is hopefully very soon to be giving birth to a new baby. And so we'll see how that transpires. But all of those things aside, you know, when you get to this age, and I know a lot of you are because I look at my YouTube stats and I see who watches me. I see, approximately how old most people are. It just gives me that stat on there, the analytics, that is. And I begin to think that at this age, there's a different push in my life than there was longer ago. And as I'm walking out here, I took one of my favorite items that I just enjoy having. It is my old Remington Model 12A. It's a pump, and it's had plenty of use. I've given it plenty of use. As a youngster, I use this thing to death. But I love it, and one of the reasons why I love it is because of the man who gave it to me. You see, there's nothing particularly special about this gun. In fact, it doesn't really even function correctly anymore. I could load it up with shells in the tube, and likely one of them would jam before I got through 3 shells. So I just use it as a single shot, and I take and put the shell in there, and that's the way it goes with this thing. Not trying to win a battle with it. But I do think of the man that gave this to me when I was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 years old. A World War II vet, fought on the north end of Africa during the early days of the war. A man with huge hands and a huge heart. And of course, the gentleman has passed along. He's left this earth quite a few years ago, but he left a legacy of memories that I'll never forget. And of course, I have something from him that I'm going to treasure till the day I die, even though it isn't, what most people would say, well, wow, that's really an awesome piece. No, this is the memory that I have of that man. So now I'm at that point in life where I've gone beyond the halfway point. I'm past the mid-century point, and the likelihood of me living to 100 is probably very slim, although, with modern technology, it gets a little bit better each year, I suppose. But really, our years aren't given to be that long typically. So I begin to think a little bit more about this whole aging process, and I'm certainly not one given to a midlife crisis, if you will, just because, well, A, I don't have enough money to have a midlife crisis, but B, I absolutely love where I am and I wouldn't change a thing. That aside, at my age, I began to think a little bit more about the whole idea of aging and the whole idea of getting older and leaving some kind of a legacy beyond just me pushing and trying to get things accomplished, things that are very temporary, okay? One of the reasons, there's a whole litany of things that we could talk about here, including, you know, whether we believe that there's a life beyond this life, etc. But that's really not where I'm going with this at all. I'm just going with it for the here and now, and the other topic, that could be a different day. One of the things that my father did that I really appreciate is the fact that he liked woodworking. And with woodworking, of course, he made many, many items. And the items that we have are still in the family today. In fact, I have an earlier video posted of some of the stuff that he produced just out of enjoyment. But just think of the legacy that was produced out of that. So, you know, we're going about our days, and many of you I know have the same interests in sawmilling, building things, and so on. I'm not particularly a woodworker, although I'm trying my hand at a couple things. But at the end of the day, what's great is to leave something that will be lasting for your family to have, for your children to have, and for others to remember you by. And your life won't just be like a vapor that it springs up, and before you know it, it's gone, and there's nothing left of it. There's a story that I like to tell once in a while when it comes to prioritization and what things are really important in life. Quite a few years ago, there was a man who I worked with, and he was a good worker. We worked together in a development department, developing new products, etc. But one day, the axe fell, and sadly, he was let go. And of course, that was the end of his job there. Now, during the course of his job, he had accumulated tons of files. He had project files, and all these things were so important to him. You know, he wouldn't have parted with one of those files for anything. But the day after he left, I watched, and our boss went in to his office and basically took a large trash can and all those files and proceeded to dump all the files right into the trash can. Now, I didn't have the heart to go and tell that man what had happened to all of his valuable files, but needless to say, that incident really stuck with me as to what is important and what is not important. All those things that he had worked on for his work were ultimately of little value after the fact. Yeah, they were important while he was doing them, and somebody thought that the project was important, and somebody spent money on the project, but after all was said and done, they really had no lasting impact on anybody. And needless to say, nobody will remember that man because of any of those projects that he worked on. Those are all gone. Those are all temporary. So I was also thinking about how we, especially here in the U.S., think about things differently than perhaps some other countries that have a longer history of society than we do. Say, for example, how we build buildings. We build houses that last maybe a century if we're lucky, at least here where I am. In one of my previous videos, I complained about using drywall because I considered it a garbage material. Whereas you go to other places and they've built houses that are there for hundreds of years. And so we have a different sense of longevity, of going beyond ourselves. The other thing that I notice in our society is that it's become fashionable for young people to take a very long time to become mature. So they spend their 20s drinking and partying and carrying on and playing video games, when I think, wow, they could be way ahead of the curve and really having more enjoyment out of life, being more satisfied than what they're doing, because those little things, those party atmosphere, that's going to go away very quickly, and sometimes it goes from being fun to then, it's a bondage that you can get yourself into. So I'm so thankful that I was raised different than that. Very thankful for the way that my mother and father raised me to think about things in a long-term manner. So I'll tell you where I'm at on the whole thing, is that at my age, I'm starting to look more at things like legacy, not a big legacy as in becoming some great important person, but who I am to my family and those around me, even to people that I don't know. So it even changes my approach to things like right here on YouTube, how I react to people, how I react when I see a video or something that I don't particularly agree with maybe, or that I think, oh, that person was just kind of, not the smartest, brightest bulb in the world. But I've made a choice to change and to not be that person, to not be, say, like, for example, what we call the troll, all right? The troll that doesn't realize that other people have hopes and dreams as well as we do. And for the most part, people are trying to do the right thing. Of course, there always will be evil in the world. And we just, what are we going to be able to do about that? I don't know. But those are a few of my thoughts on getting older. And I know that many of you, like I said, are in that same situation. And so you're thinking about these things too. And you're thinking about how you're being perceived and how you're going to be perceived for the years after you're gone, and what kind of a lasting impression that you can make in this world and on those that are immediately around you. So I appreciate all of you for watching. As always,